Well, hey, welcome. Today we're going to do a little tonalist pastel sketch on this little 12 by 9 sheet of sanded premium pastel paper by UArt 600 grade that I have taped up to my little drawing board that we have fastened to the wall here. And I have a little value sketch. It's really not a sketch, it's actually a black and white printout of this same photo, and this is another photo that I took while walking our dog. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside, and I'll make reference to that from time to time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by going ahead and actually going to enlarge this and zoom in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and start putting in some of the basic values, and I'm going to use this as my guide for the most part. Very light, bigger shapes. And this is just a piece of charcoal that I'm using, and I should be able to get maybe 3 or 4 layers on top of this. So I'm still looking to work very lightly. What I like about this image is it's pretty close to, there's a lot of things I like about it. The actual clouds have a nice shape to them. The road has some light bouncing off of it. Some of our neighbors' lights are on, and the composition is almost like a steel yard composition, so I'm not going to look to replicate it perfectly. We're going to look to just go ahead and use the information that's in that photo to hopefully create an interesting painting. So I'm using the side of the charcoal, and we're going to go ahead and just try and rough out those darker shapes that you see throughout the bottom of the photograph. This time of year is tough. We're finishing up February, in the middle of winter here in the Northeast, and we are in the middle of a major windstorm right now, so there's a good chance that this might not even work, or it might cut out. That's okay. It's a normal Wednesday night. Just made a little commitment to myself to go live every Wednesday night as a means of practicing demoing live and making sure that I at least have part of the middle of the week lined up. And I get some painting in. That's about all we're going to do there. So what I'll do now is I'm going to look for some lighter gray. And I happen to have plenty of gray pastels. So we're going to look to just model out some of the basic shapes of the clouds. Now soft pastel is something that I started experimenting with years ago when my wife and I, Janine, were commuting into New Jersey 5 or 6 days a week for work, and from the Poconos here where we live, and we would commute at the very minimum, 2 hours a day, an hour each way. That's at the minimum. And we also, had a young family too. So I would kind of exercise my creative ideas, my creative impulses, desire to paint and whatnot. And I would use pastel, usually on MDF. So I have a lot of paintings in the basement of our home and elsewhere. Some on paper, some are even framed, but most of them are not. But pictures that I took while we were on vacation, places like Outer Banks and Maine and that sort of thing. A few of them are framed, but not many. And it was a great way for me to kind of stay engaged with painting and creating. So I'm real appreciative of that, and I've come to kind of miss the feeling of creating in pastel. It comes together quickly. You don't need to be an expert in paint mixing or handling different brush strokes and that sort of thing. You can just paint what you see for the most part. So I'm going to bring this picture that I have up on my iPad so I can get a better sense for the color now that I have most of the major shapes in. And I'm going to go ahead and start and plug away with some of the more nuanced components in this painting. And I'll start with this bottom section. I'll start building in some of the additional shapes and colors. And I'm going to go with this little earthy green. I'm going to go ahead and try and put in some indication of the road. Now, in addition to experimenting on my own, I did take some courses at Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia, mostly workshops, weekend workshops. Joseph Sweeney was an instructor that I worked with several times. And he is a great artist that for the longest time was based out of Pennsylvania. I think he had a studio in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. And he did awesome work in landscape paintings and pastel primarily. And he taught at Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts and was a really good teacher, and he's still painting. I think he might be spending most of his time near Cape May, New Jersey, like a lot of Philadelphians do. So I learned a lot in those classes from him and also the other students that attended. But those were wonderful because, well, for a number of reasons. Usually it would mean my wife and I were taking a trip into Philadelphia for a weekend. And it gave me an opportunity to kind of re-engage these muscles, these creative muscles. So. Alright, so you can see I'm able to layer in some color over the charcoal without too much difficulty. And my hands are getting quite dirty. I'm trying to apply a painterly effect, so I'm not going to use a lot of smudging, and I'm not really going to try and use a really fine point for a lot of the drawing and painting that I'm doing. Alright, I'm going to go in and grab a nice blue. well. I think we're going to see the blue if we really just look at this. The blue is really light toward the horizon. It gets a little darker toward the top of the sky. This is at sunset, so I guess that makes sense. It's you know, the sky is being illuminated still down near the horizon by the sun. I won't go too far down, but wonderful thing about pastel, there's a lot again that I really appreciate about pastel, but you have really no choice unless you severely overwork a painting using soft pastel. You have no choice but to have brilliant colors incorporated into your painting. Even nocturnes, I've done a few nocturne paintings in pastel lately. Even those, you know, you tend to see brilliant colors. Ooh, and the wind's really blowing outside, so if we lose connectivity, I apologize. All right, let's see. All right, that's close to what I want. Now we're gonna go in and grab a little bit of a warmer blue. It's also a little bit darker. It has more of a purple tint. And we'll darken some of these cloud shapes just a bit. Process for pastel painting is not, and as far as how you address kind of the ordering of the painting, is similar to oil painting, I find. Generally speaking, go from darker to lighter, thinner to thicker. So gradually, as we put layers on, I'll be pushing it in a little bit harder. All right, so now we're going to have a little orange. And we'll go with let's see, I'm going to get a little piece of scrap paper. I have some darker dust on here, and I don't want the color to get muddy. So scrub it out there. We're going to go ahead and work some of this orange. Oops. Okay. Let's have a look. How's that registering? Oh, there we go. That works. Just taking a step back and looking at how those colors are working together. A couple different shades of orange and yellow and red that we're going to lay in there. I'll go ahead and take the same pastel and get it in. And we're not looking for a lot of detail at all. Very abstract shapes at this point. And for the most part, throughout the whole painting is going to be just a whole bunch of abstract abstract shapes put against up next to each other and then overlapping in some instances. All right, so let's turn this off. Okay. Alrighty. Well, there's going to be some opportunity to build up some of the mountains in the background here, and some of the tree shapes as well, and selectively emphasize some of the darker shadow areas, and we'll try and build in some balance of cool and lights in there so it's not too boring and monochromatic. Right now it's just the big shapes that are in. Before I do that though, I'm going to get a little bit more nuanced color toward the horizon, and we have a couple of things that I see there. So we have this kind of orange and pink. Almost a pale yellow, a lemon yellow light, I would guess this is. Don't want to overdo that. Paler pink, which is almost a white, just slightly tinted. We're going to see this in a couple of other spots amongst the clouds. Just let you bounce around a little bit. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is look for my little burnt sienna, and we're going to build up these mountains a little bit. What we have are, we have a road going downhill, curling around, and we have a whole network of roads and a community and so forth. But off in the distance, within this view, we have a series of mountains, and I'm going to exaggerate them just a little bit, just to make it a little bit more interesting. What we'll do now is play with the cloud shapes and get a little bit more interest going on up in that sky. This is one of those scenes that the composition just naturally unfolded very nicely. The clouds have a nice shape. It's going to give us an opportunity to kind of create some perspective without altering the scene all too much. and the shape of the trees and everything else is organized pretty nicely. So we're not going to deviate too far from the actual scene itself. But I'm going to get some of those cloud shapes in, and we'll try and kind of work up the sky close to being finished, and then we'll pull up some of the tree shapes and refine those, and we'll work on the ground plane, and hopefully get that looking a little bit better and a little bit more nuanced. And should go pretty quick. I think we've been painting for maybe 20 minutes. We already have the semblance of a scene, but with a little bit of luck here, we should see this come together pretty quickly. So I'm going to go into a nice light gray. This is a cooler gray, and we're going to retrace our steps with some of these cloud shapes. We're going to maintain a nice light touch, and you don't want to wash out any of that existing color completely, because we do see light bounce around quite a bit in clouds, especially at golden hour time of day, or sunset or sunrise. I'm still using a pretty light touch. And in some areas we're getting close to having the surface saturated to the point where it's not going to be able to accept much more color without us pressing pretty hard. And off into the distance, if we think about the sky plane, as clouds get further away, they're going to appear smaller and smaller because they're further off in the distance, and that sky plane looms overhead like this, and the cloud shapes that are overhead will be much bigger. Okay. All right. Now we'll also create some tonal variance, so lights and darks. So I'm going to get a bit of a darker purple. And I'm just going to thread some of that through some of these clouds. Let that serve a little bit as almost like a shadow. We're going to be a little bit of a lighter touch, incorporating that purple and the clouds in the distance. All right, and we're going to get some of this purple into the foreground. And also into the distant mountains. take a step back and just think for a moment. All right. I think what we're going to do is reshape this roadway just a little bit. We want this to bend towards us. Line up some of this shadow area a little bit. Tall pine tree shape here, maybe bending a little bit. We have a lot of these tall pine trees out by us here in the Poconos, so get a few along here as well. Rough and in shape, and a few here as well. Using the corner end of this pastel stick. 3 of them in, and then we'll rough in some other tree shapes. Excuse me. Before I get too far along, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to get some slightly more intense highlights on the bottom of the clouds because the light is reflecting up. So we're going to grab this little stick of, I would say this is cadmium orange. That would be my guess. And I don't want to be too heavy-handed at all with this, but just a little touch here and there toward the bottom of these cloud shapes will do. And we could always smooth it out if it's too much. Pastel is very forgiving. There is a limit to the number of layers that you can put in, and if you overwork it, colors will get a little muddy. But it is extraordinarily forgiving. You know, if you make mistakes, you can make adjustments. Kind of have a little bit of a V shape going on. We have that orange light bouncing around everywhere there. Okay. I'm gonna get a little bit of this orange, maybe a little bit more intense. Bottoms of some of those clouds. There we go. we're also going to put that down before I do too much. I'm gonna take my little pinky finger because there's no pastel on it, and I'm going to use that to smooth out some of the harder edges that we have. And I'm going to go in and cut out some sky holes within this cloud pattern in a bit. I'm going to wait to do that. That'll probably be one of the last things that I do. That'll just involve me blocking in areas of blue over the top of what we have. As a matter of fact, before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of what I would liken to terracotta. I'm going to get some hints of red in the foreground here and a couple of different patterns. Will help pull these areas forward a little bit. Get some of that mixed in all throughout the midground and foreground. Take a step back and look at that. Okay. And now get some of the, I have a cooler blue. I'm going to use in these hills in the background just a little bit. Have it peek through. Whoops. Oh, that's okay. Happy little accident. So, some of that green showing through. Yeah, it might look like a mountain a little bit further off in the distance. We actually do have one of those in the background, so I'm going to roll with it. I'm just going to change the shape a little bit so it's a little bit more dynamic, and then we're going to come over the top with a different shade of blue. And I'm going to use my sky color here to cut in some sky shapes, some stronger indications of there being some blue sky filtering through here. Gray. Here. There we go. Smooth that out in just a bit. Too intense. I want to desaturate it a little bit. We're almost done. We're going to wrap up in just a little bit, but nice little scene here of a sunset. Just roughly 30 to 40 minutes in. And I think what we'll do is we're going to build up some of the orangey red that we see closer to the horizon. Red bouncing around in a couple different spots here. The light does bounce all over. Okay. I'll do that. We have this nice Rembrandt soft pastel. And we're going to use this to color in create some of the sky holes within and amongst the trees here. We're going to see that all throughout these. Through one more time because we're going to put some more trees in there before we wrap up and build up some of those tree shapes a little bit more. So we're going to go ahead and darken this side considerably. Of some branches coming across. Also going to have the indication of some deciduous trees as well coming up. We'll do it both here. These are leafless deciduous trees. And one here. Darken as we get closer. some of these shapes. And now we're also going to indication of that road, bending around and picking up some of those reflections. And then here, I'll just play a little bit. And I'm also going to incorporate some idea of one of our neighbors' homes there with their exterior lighting. That'll probably be the last thing, if not one of the last things that we do here. And that'll involve the use of some cooler lighter colors. So we have this cadmium yellow light, and right here we have a home that is lighting up in between and amongst the trees. We'll reinforce some of those dark areas, and then we also have some cooler blue. Take this little piece here and we're gonna work that in. That's there. Perfect. And there's a little of that there. And we'll get some of that yellow reflecting in as well. that's it. I think it's pretty close to what I was hoping for. I'm gonna take a step back and look for opportunities maybe to enhance the sky a little bit. But for the most part, I think we're close to what I was hoping to accomplish with this particular little pastel painting. I might come in and lighten up parts of the sky. And let's see. I have an even lighter blue somewhere. Let's see, is this it? Nope, that's okay. Touches of that all around. And here. No, can't see, being very light with this touch, being careful not to cancel out any of the underlying colors, just lighten them up a little bit. My hands are getting quite dirty now, so I run the risk of muddying this up a little bit. Breaking up some of these cloud shapes just a little bit. There we go. All right. I think I'm going to leave it there for now. But, there we have a nice little sunset scene based upon photo taken while walking our dog Holly. And you can see there's the actual original photo and the corresponding soft pastel painting. Once again, painted on 600 grade UArt premium sanded pastel paper, beige, and was introduced to that during a portrait workshop that I'm working through this week, and just couldn't resist the the opportunity to create some landscape paintings using these materials, kind of going back to my roots, to a time where I had extraordinary little time to create. And that's one of the convenient things about pastels. You can leave them set up ready to go, and without much fuss or muss, just by taping some paper to a nice clean surface, you can get working in your free time like I'm doing tonight. Anyway, thanks for joining. Hope you enjoyed, and hopefully we'll see you again next week, same time, 9 p.m. Wednesday evening, and we'll walk through another process, demo, or a book that I'm reading. Hope you have a great week. Take care.